Bond valuation actually is the very important topic in financial accounting because no matter the company invest in the long-term bond or issue long-term bond as liabilities, we should value them as the assets or liabilities in the balance sheet. Let's take a look at how to value the bond. Actually, in this chapter, we should learn what's the timing and allocation of these cash flows. On June 30th, 2024, this company issued 10% state rate. Okay, so we are given one interest rate, this state rate. State rate is to determine the periodic interest payments. The face value of the bond was $200 million. The product of $200 million and the state rate, 10%, represents periodic interest payments, or these are all cash outflows. So the borrower should pay the lender this amount periodically and mature in 20 years on June 30th, 2044. We are also given another rate, that's market rate. This rate is used to calculate the present value. In other words, it is to determine the discount rate, the present value factors. Interest was paid semi-annually. Okay, so I didn't see this information before. Since it is paid semi-annually, so the periodic interest payment should be divided by 2 because it is 2 payments instead of 1 annual payment. So this what I circled, this is a payment for every 6 months or half a year. The payment was made on June 30th and December 31st. Beginning on December 31st, 2024, which actually 6 months after the issuance of this bond. This is very important because it indicates the interest payment is an ordinary annuity. In the corporate finance, we basically need to calculate the present value of these cash flows to determine the price or value of this bond. And there's 2 cash flows. One is the $10 million periodic interest payments. So this is an annuity. 20 years, every half year, so 40 payments. And there will be another terminal payment, which is due when the bond matures. This actually is the principal, the face value, $200 million. And this is just once when the bond matures. So this is a single amount of cash flows. So that's all the cash flows. What we do is the bond price or value is determined by the present value of these cash flows. We basically use 10 million, that's a payments, annuity, every half year. Then we find out what's the present value factor of this annuity. 40 periods, 20 years because paid semi-annually, multiply 2, 40. Since interest is compounded semi-annually also, so the discount rate, market rate, will be halved, 6%. You look at table and we have the present value factor. So the present value of this interest payment is $150 million. The last one was the payments after 20 years, but the single payments, which represent the future value 20 years later. We multiply the discount rate, which is also determined by 40 periods, 6%. Then we can have the present value of this single sum cash flows. Basically, it's the present value of the principal. The sum of both is the price of this bond, which is less than $200 million. You may ask why the company issued this bond at a lower price, or this represents amount of cash the company can raise from issuance of this debt. The reason is the market rate 12% is greater than the rate this bond offers. In other words, the company offer a less preferred or less favored interest rate than the market. So it must sell it at a discount. There's no incentives for the lenders to invest in 10% and miss the 12% potential return. Okay, so here, for the bond valuation to determine the periodic cash payments, this is cash outflow. It's determined by the principal multiply state rate. In this case, it is paid semi-annually, so that's the cash outflows. While in accounting, it also recognizes cash interest expense. The interest expense is calculated using the net book value of bond multiply the market rate. So the company will recognize interest expense twice a year because it paid twice a year. But this amount is different from the cash payments. For more details of the liabilities, you will be introduced in the intermediate accounting tool. Here, in the time value of money chapter, I just introduced you the methods to determine the price or value of long-term bond.